Hello and welcome to another video by Day Night Gaming. In this video, will be covering the single target rotation for Black Mage in the MMORPG known as Final Fantasy XIV for the Endwalkers Expansion. So there's a lot to cover in this video, and I'm going to be explaining a lot of things in this first section of the video. But if you want to skip straight to the rotation, I'll have the timestamp listed below. Now, due to the complexity of the class, I have switched the elemental gauge into simple mode. Now, even though there's a rotation that this class can go through, please keep in mind that it also has a priority system layered on top of it. And due to the nature of the elemental gauge, if you need to, there are a few things that you need to prioritize, even if it means diverting from the rotation from time to time. You basically want to do whatever it takes to keep Enochian up at all times so you can take advantage of that 20% damage increase, as well as being able to get those free polyglot to use on your Xenoglossy. And the way you do that is you got to make sure you keep your timer going on the elemental gauge. You want to have this bar filling up at all times constantly. Now, the two diamonds on the right of the elemental gauge are your Xenoglossy stacks, so you can stack up to 2 at any given time. After that, now the gauge can still continue to grow, but you will not get an extra Xenoglossy unless you make room for it on your bar. Now, the nice thing about Xenoglossy is you can use that while you're moving because there's no actual casting time. Now, the way we activate and maintain Enochian is by using spells or abilities that grant Astral Fire or Umbral Ice. So using spells like Fire or Blizzard or using Transpose will grant Enochian and allow the timer to start. Now, keep in mind that if at any time the timer hits 0, your Enochian will drop and your bar will reset. Now, every time the bar maxes out, you'll get a polyglot or a Xenoglossy stack. So it's very important to prioritize maintaining Enochian, and also to remember that Fire 4 does not grant Astral Fire, and it's usually within their Fire 4 burst phase is when people tend to lose Enochian. Either that or the boss has disjointed or there's a quick time maneuver event. But it's important to note that if the boss is untargetable and you cannot cast a spell on them, as long as you're not locked in some way that prevents you from doing any actions, you can use Transpose to continue your Enochian timer. Next, I want to discuss something called Paradox. So notice that I currently have Fire 1 and Blizzard 1 on my bars. Now, if I had 3 Astral Fire, which is easily obtained by casting Fire 3, and then I swap into 3 Umbral Ice by using Blizzard 3, I will change Fire 1 and Blizzard 1 into Paradox. Once again, we're going to be using this quite often. So there are 2 different ways to do it. To have 3 Astral Fire using Fire 3 and swapping into 3 Umbral Ice by using Blizzard 3, or if you have 3 Umbral Ice as well as 3 Umbral Hearts, so 3 blue and 3 white, and then we swap to 3 Astral Fire by using Fire 3, that will also give you Paradox. And if you look at the top of our elemental gauge, you'll notice a singular diamond that's half red and half blue. That signifies that you have Paradox active. So later on, you'll notice in the rotation that we use Fire 1, but that's really just a placeholder for Paradox. We don't actually cast Fire 1. Whenever you would see Fire 1 on the rotation, we're just casting Paradox instead. And generally speaking, we're going to be using Paradox to continue the Fire 4 phase. You're going to notice that there's 3 Fire 4s in a row, and then a Paradox, and then 3 more Fire 4. And the reason why we use Paradox is because it will maintain our Enochian and also give us the added bonus of making the next Fire 4 free. But it's very important to note that if we don't use this, because Fire 4 does not give any Astral Fire, we will need to use something that will refresh our Enochian. So that's usually going to be either Paradox or it's going to be Despair, or any time that we cast Blizzard 3 or Fire 3. Now remember, Xenoglossy, Fire 4, and Blizzard 4 do not refresh Enochian. Keep that in mind. So our primary spells that are either going to continue Enochian or start it off are going to be Blizzard 3, Fire 3, Paradox, or Despair. But please keep in mind that if you cast Despair, you will immediately go to 0 MP, and you're going to have to use Blizzard 3 as your next spell in order to get your your mana back. And in an emergency, remember, you always have transpose to fall back onto. Now, I know this is a lot to take in all at once, which is why I'm taking the time to explain it. So remember, there are two different ways to get into Paradox. Either have 3 blue, 3 white, and then switch into 3 red, or have 3 red and switch into 3 blue. So the easy way is Blizzard 3 into Blizzard 4. That'll give you your 3 blue, 3 white, and then go into Fire 3. And that's generally going to be the way that we're going to do it through the rotation. But another way to do it is to go from Fire 3 into Blizzard 3. And that's one spell less than doing it the other way. So if you really need to get into Paradox, that's another way to do it. So remember, Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Fire 3, or if you want, just Fire 3 into Blizzard 3. Also take note that you can cast spells in between switching elements. All that matters is you have the right amount of either Astral Fire or Umbral Ice and Umbral Hearts when you switch elements. So I'm going to go ahead and let all those stacks drop off. So now I'm cleared out. I'm going to use Fire 3. That's going to give me 3 Astral Fires. And then I'm going to immediately use Blizzard 3. And that's going to give me Paradox also. So next up, I'm going to show you the rotation that we're going to use. And it's important to note that before the rotation starts, it's expected that you already have a Paradox stack readily available. So in order to do that, we're going to have a very complex opener that will have Paradox preloaded at the end of it. So you're going to do an opener first at the start of every boss fight. And then once you do that opener, you're going to then transition into the rotation. And you're going to repeat the rotation after that over and over and over again. You will only do the opener at the start of the boss fight, and you're not going to repeat that. Also take note that when we're transitioning from the opener into the rotation, we're going to skip the first 3 spells of the rotation and go directly into Fire 3 because we already have a Paradox stack waiting for us. And for simplified reasons, I'm going to only show you the rotation for this part of the video, and we're going to save the opener until after that. So we're going to cover one thing at a time. So right now I'm just going to explain the rotation, and then later I'm going to show you the full rotation with the opener. Now, as you can see, we have 2 slots that have Fire 1 on the rotation, and that's because you cannot drag and drop Paradox onto your hotbar. So we're going to put Fire 1 in those places, and that's going to be the placeholder. So once you activate Paradox, Fire 1's going to change into Paradox on the hotbar. So I'm going to go and give us a Paradox stack because when you're doing the rotation, you're going to go from the opener into the regular rotation, and you're going to have a Paradox stack. So to simulate that, I'm going to give us Blizzard 3 into Blizzard 4 into Fire 3. And now you're going to notice that the Fire 1 spells are going to turn into Paradox on the rotation list, as you can see there. Now, the way this rotation works is once you're in the rotation, you can continuously loop from top to bottom or left to right. So once you cast your Despair, you're going to use all your MP. Then you're going to start back over from the beginning, cast Blizzard 3, and you're going to generate your MP back. And by the time you've casted your first 3 spells, your max MP, ready to go into Blizzard 3 again. And you're just going to keep looping this rotation over and over again. So it's going to be Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Paradox, Fire 3. Then you're going to do Fire 4 3 times in a row, if you can, if possible. And then Paradox to refresh your Enochian. Then you're going to do another 3 Fire 4 if possible. And then you're going to blow out all your MP on Despair. But remember, this is a priority to keep your Enochian up. So if you have to cut a Fire 4 at any time because of movement, because the boss runs away, do whatever you can do to keep your Enochian running, even if you have to drop Fire 4. So once again, as you can see here, we're just going to loop from left to right. Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Paradox, Fire 3, 3 Fire 4s in a row, Paradox, another 3 Fire 4s in a row, and then ending with Despair. Rinse and repeat over and over and over again until the boss dies. And remember, as a good rule of thumb, before you cast a Fire 4, if your Enochian timer has 5 or less seconds to go, instead of casting that Fire 4, cast either Blizzard 3, Fire 3, Despair, or Paradox. And if it's 2 or less seconds, you can either use Swift Cast and cast any of those spells, spells, or you can do triple cast and once again use one of those spells. And in a dire emergency, once again, you can use transpose. So remember, at the start of the video, I stated that even though there is a rotation that you can go through, I consider Black Mage more of a priority-based playstyle. And that's not just because of Enochian, but also because of things like the lightning dot that you get from casting Thunder 3, or using Xenoglossy with your polyglot stacks. So as you can see here in the rotation, I do not have lightning 3 or polyglot listed, and that's because you want to use them at your own player discretion. Now it's going to be listed in the opener, and after that, while your lightning ticks are going, because everyone's spell speed is going to be different depending on their playstyle, whenever your lightning dot is about to wear off, you can then choose to slot in Thunder 3 to refresh that. But you always have to keep in mind your Enochian timer. So for me, I personally like to refresh lightning in between times where I'm gonna go from Blizzard 4 into Fire 3, or after a Paradox going into a Fire 4. So you have to really pick and choose when you're gonna do it, and always remember to prioritize your Enochian. And the same thing goes with your polyglots. That's an ability that doesn't require any cast time, so you can use that whenever you need to, especially when you're on the move. But you always want to make sure you don't cap out at 2 polyglots going into a third one. You want to make sure you use your Xenoglossy before you would get a third polyglot, because you can't actually get a third polyglot and it's going to fall off. So I like to use that after Despair, before Blizzard 3, or after Blizzard 3. Anytime at that point in time, or whenever the boss is moving around and I need to move, or whenever I need to dodge some type of enemy mechanic or telegraph. As for using ley lines, I like to use that during my Fire 4 burst windows, and I like to always have that off cooldown, so whenever it's available I use them. Lastly, you'll notice that I don't have swift cast or triple cast here. Now once again, I like to use those as often as possible so that they can come back very quickly and I can continue to reuse them. But some people do like to save them for times of emergency or when you need to move or dodge any mechanics. So once again, I'm not showing that on the list of the rotation, and you can use that at your own discretion. So now I'm going to show you the full rotation, but before that I'm going to show you how to swap the elemental gauge from the standard mode into the simple mode. So go ahead and go to your system menu, then go to HUD layout, current UI element, go all the way to the bottom and select elemental gauge. Then hit the UI settings cog on the right of that, and then check switch job gauge to simple mode and save. And as you can see here, this is much more easier to read than that big dial clock. And once again, I'm showing you that at the end of the opener, we're gonna have Paradox ready to go. And remember, make sure you drag and drop fire onto your hotbars, because you can't actually drag and drop Paradox. So as you can see here, this is the opener, and as you can see there, now you'll see that fire is on the opener as well. So we're gonna use it once near the end of the opener and then twice during the regular rotation. And once you finish the opener, remember you're gonna skip the first 3 spells on your normal rotation. So you're going to skip Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, and that first Paradox. And you're going to go directly into Fire 3. Very important. And as you can see here, we also have near the end of the opener, we have Blizzard 3. Then we have a couple spells in between. And then we have a Blizzard 4. And that's going to give us the Paradox that we're going to move on and hold on to for the main rotation. And also notice that at the end of the opener, we're going to cast Thunder 3. After that, once you get into the opener, it's up to you, the player, to continuously refresh the lightning dot given by Thunder 3. Lastly, it's also important to note that I always make sure to use sharp cast before Thunder 3 so that I always have that sharp cast proc available, because I really want that thundercloud effect. Also, it's very important to state that the opener that I'm showing you is the very basic version of the opener for Black Mage, and it is not the absolute most efficient opener that a Black Mage can use. It's just the most basic, and what that means is you can even use this opener without any countdown timer. But there are better, more optimized rotations for Black Mage out there for time times when you can have a countdown timer active. So if you're looking to use an opener that's more tailored toward a raid setting, like a savage raid or a static group, and you have the luxury of having a wait timer, then it's best to coordinate with your party to use a more specific opener than the one I'm showing. Now, please take note that if you're watching this video at a later date, the gear that I'm showing and the food that I'm showing might not be up to date, but I wanted to highlight the spell speed that I currently have. After I eat my food, I'm gonna have a spell speed of 1649. Now, it's up to you what feels comfortable. Some people like very little spell speed, some people like a lot. Most of the time, people like to stack a lot of crit, but it's up to you to find that spell speed that's comfortable for you. With the spell speed that I currently have, it brings my Fire 3 cast time from 3.5 seconds all the way down to 3.20. Just remember, the more spell speed that you have, the more comfy it will feel to cast these spells, because it doesn't take as long to cast. But try out whatever spell speed you like. Everyone has a different preference. Just to keep in mind, the higher your spell speed is, the faster you cast, which means it's much easier to keep your Enochian up because you can get your Fire 4s casted much faster. So it's up to you what you want your spell speed. I've heard of people going all the way up to 2169 on their spell speed. So mess around and see what fits your preference. Because remember, the worst thing that can happen is you're in your Fire 4 burst phase and you run out of Enochian timer, your Fire 4 gets interrupted, your whole combo pretty much goes out the window. So faster, higher spell speed can help you out with that. Now onto the opener. Keep in mind that I do have a intelligence potion listed. Now you don't have to use it, but for those who do want to use it, I wanted to include it on where I tend to use it. Now it can be moved around. It all depends on your spell speed. But if you're using the spell speed that I use, I like to have it in between the first two Fire 4s. And the reason for that is, even though it's not listed in the opener, I like to use triple cast. So my first 3 spells are GCDs and not actual casting spells, so I can clip the potion into that third global cooldown, which is the first Fire 4. But starting out with a triple cast is all up to player preference, so I'll leave that up to you. So then we're going to do Sharp Cast into Fire 3, Thunder 3, Fire 4. Then we're going to use our Intelligence Potion if we want to. Fire 4, Amplifier to give us a Polyglot, Ley Lines, Fire 4, Swift Cast, Despair, Mana Font, Fire 4, Despair, Blizzard 3, Xenoglossy, Paradox, Blizzard 4, Thunder 3. Now remember, when we transition to our normal rotation, we're going to skip the first 3 spells of the rotation and immediately start with Fire 3. After that, we're going to do 3 Fire 4 in a row, followed by a Paradox, then another 3 Fire 4s in a row, and then a Despair. That should blow all our MP. We should be at 0, and we start back from the top, starting with Blizzard 3, into Blizzard 4, into Paradox, and then Fire 3, and once again 3 Fire 4s in a row, followed by a Paradox, another 3 Fire 4s in a row, and ending with Despair. Rinse and repeat, starting from the top, and just keep going over and over until the enemy is dead. Thank you, hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider hitting that thumbs up, hitting that subscribe button, and ringing that bell for future notifications on videos that I might be posting in the future. And in case you're interested in supporting the channel even more, I do have a merch website at streamlabs.com/DNGdangerous/merch. And until next time, take care, goodbye.